Hi, welcome back to Technical Writing Uncensored. I'm here with technical writer Brittany Robrahn. Welcome to the channel, Brittany.
Thanks for having me.
So, how did you get started in technical writing?
Just like a lot of technical writers I've spoken to in the past, my path to technical writing was not one that necessarily makes a lot of sense. I went to school for psychology and then counseling, and after some unexpected challenges in that world, I spoke to a friend who worked at a software company. And he told me, I know that you just graduated. Sorry. And I know that you're really good at writing. And, I know that you're really into computers. Have you ever heard of technical writing? And I told him no, but I'm interested. Please tell me more. And he explained, just the high level what it is. And he said at his company, their technical writer was drowning and would really love some help. And would I be interested in having a conversation? And I said, yeah, definitely sign me up. So I met with the technical writer over there and I landed a contract with them. And I learned with her for about 9 months. And it was amazing. I had never looked back since then.
Nice. All right. And you worked for a healthcare startup. Please tell me more about that experience.
This was my first venture into the healthcare world. So it felt like a little bit of a learning curve. There was a lot of terminology and things like that I wasn't necessarily exposed to before, but everybody there made it very seamless and
Hmm.
everybody was so friendly and so helpful. And they had no problem answering my questions, even if I was like, please explain it like I'm five. Everybody was very accommodating, and I very much appreciated that.
Okay. So, were you on a team? You mentioned that there was one other technical writer.
That was the only occasion, that first contract role, where I did work on a team. Every other role I've had, I've been the sole technical writer, and I was either placed on, a communications team or a product team, just wherever somebody could find a place that fit. Yeah, it's been challenging now and then to not have other people to lean back on and say, hey, I'm not in love with how this is turning out. Can I get your opinion? So not having that sounding board is sometimes challenging, but I'm also a pretty independent person and I don't mind working as a satellite, basically.
A good thing, huh? Because there's so
Yeah,
many full tech writers. Just frustrating sometimes.
definitely.
Yeah, if nothing else, nobody else gets our jokes.
Exactly. Not a lot of people
So,
care about the Oxford comma as much as I do.
yeah, or there's so many grammar jokes that are just left unsaid, or like
Hmm.
losing it at Weird Al's Word Crimes song, which is a
Yeah,
classic, and I will
exactly.
die on that hill. So, what was your day to day like as a solo technical writer?
It depends on, what's going on in the grand scheme of things.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's, I'm in research mode and I'm just trying to read up on a new feature. So I'm just looking through all sorts of tickets, just putting my research hat on. Other times it's been more meeting heavy, just meeting with stakeholders, meeting with subject matter experts to ask questions, having people review drafts.
Mhm.
And other times it's been, oh, we're about to release. Now it's review mode and make sure everything looks very polished and pretty before we release it, and anything in between.
Since you worked in the healthcare industry or for that health software startup, were there any special rules or regulations you had to follow?
We did have some policies regarding retention of data. So all of our emails had like a 10-year deletion policy, which I've never kept an email for 10 years. So,
Mhm.
so things like that. And we had to be a little careful about how we managed things on SharePoint. We used a lot of color coding. So
Mhm.
if it's a red folder, that's got like private stuff, and a lot of times you wouldn't even have access to those folders, so you wouldn't even necessarily know they were there. But yeah, different colors meant different things. So you just had to be careful about where you were putting information.
So apparently you have opinions about humor in technical writing. Please tell me more.
I do. I'm the kind of person who I find humor in everything. And if you disagree, I feel like you're lying. You know,
No
I feel like in
comments.
the workplace, there are things that happen that maybe on the surface aren't funny, but you're telling a story to a coworker, and just with that extra lore and knowledge, you find the
Mhm.
humor in it. And I feel like that's a way to, bond with your coworkers and get through the day to day. And I've always really loved using humor as a way to bond with other people, especially when it comes to being in the workplace where some people take it so seriously and it's so rigid. And that's always felt really wrong to me.
Have you ever been able to incorporate humor into your technical writing? Or is it just a strictly off the book sort of thing? Don't write it down.
Definitely behind the scenes was more of where my humor could shine. Just I'm really struggling with this project, and I'm venting to my subject matter expert, and we're going back and forth with, memes and everything. But in my writing, unfortunately, I haven't gotten to a place where I could sneak things in. I'm not sure if you've ever looked at the release notes for
Mhm.
Slack, but they really tie in some jokes and, just their way of wording things. Oh, we squashed these bugs. And so I've always loved the way that they've incorporated silly things inside
Mhm.
their release notes. So I've always had them in the back of my head as, like that is the ultimate goal, to be able to work somewhere that I could just be funny in my release notes and have it not be so serious.
I've heard that in gaming documentation, you can sometimes do that, especially in error messages, or because that community really loves their Easter eggs, the in
Exactly. Yeah.
jokes.
Easter eggs, callbacks, references to other games or just other pop culture in general. So, yeah, I've heard that too. And that's another example that I would just love something like that.
It really needs to be more humor, especially, in the error messages or other things. I love that Amazon, when it has you can't find a page, it's got a dog. I'm still not happy I couldn't find a page, but dog makes everything better, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, oops, we couldn't find what you're looking for, but here's a cute picture of a dog. Like, who doesn't love
Mhm.
that?
Yeah. Hey, quick sidebar. If you're capturing screenshots for docs, and let's be honest, you are, then Snagit is the tool I've used for basically my entire career. It's affordable, it's intuitive, and it has way more features than you'd expect at that price point. There's an affiliate link in the description if you want to check it or Camtasia out. Full disclosure, I get a small cut at no extra cost to you if you decide to buy something, but I'd recommend it either way. Okay, back to it. So, what is your situation right now?
Right now, I am in between jobs, unfortunately. I was part of a pretty large scale reduction in workforce at that healthcare startup. But
Mhm.
I feel like that's one of those risks you take when you join a startup. It's not always going to pan out to be something super long term. So I am actively looking and interviewing. So fingers crossed I find something pretty soon.
Yeah, well, it's not just startups right now. It seems like everybody is having layoffs. And
Exactly, a little
wait,
bit of everybody.
yeah, it's so dysfunctional the way that corporations do this, and it's so sterile. Reduction in workforce. You mean you fired a bunch of people to
Exactly.
save money
Yeah.
or whatever?
And yeah, and people that did a lot of really great work did nothing wrong. It
Hmm.
wasn't performance based. It's just oops, we need money in the budget, and this is the only thing we could come up with. So it's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but hard to be mad about it at the same time.
Yeah. I found it hard to be mad, but easy to be hurt.
Yes,
That's
very
maybe,
much
I think.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive and I take things like that a little personally sometimes. So even when people say it had nothing to do with performance, it's just numbers,
Yeah.
it's hard to not take that to heart.
Yeah. Come on. Those numbers are people. I mean,
Exactly.
all right. Going back to technical writing, what tools have you used, especially at this most recent one?
I have used a ton of tools. So I've used anywhere from Madcap Flare to RoboHelp for a little bit. I've used Very Funny. We used Adobe InDesign for templates once upon a time. We
Mhm.
very quickly moved away from that, but
I was gonna say,
it was
didn't
hard to
realize you
keep
still
up,
made that.
formatting changes like, oh, we changed our logo, but now we have to change it in all these document templates, and it was a nightmare. So then we moved over to Word, and I feel like Word is one of those tools that just always keeps coming back. It just sounds so antiquated, but it's one of those tools that it kind of lives through the test of time. So it's funny that it has been a tool that I've used pretty frequently in my career. And then I've had more of the all-in-one tools recently. ClickHelp was one of them, and the most recent was Contentful, which is a little more developer friendly, but still all in one. You do all of your edits and publishing all in the same place.
Can you tell me a bit about ClickHelp and Contentful? I've never used them.
Yeah, so coming from a background with Madcap Flare where you had to get engineering involved, sometimes to get publishing to happen and go to the right place. ClickHelp and Contentful took those middlemen out of the
Hmm.
equation. So it's maybe a little more intensive for engineering to get things set up in the first place. But after things are set up, it's just a click and go. Oh, I need to make this change and I'm publishing it right now and it's live right now. I've come from the background where it's Madcap Flare, but it's tied to GitHub and Jenkins, and all of these moving parts have to happen to get publishing to happen. I would run into issues where, oh, well, engineering's really backed up. You're going to have to wait. Docs don't wait. Like, if something is wrong and it needs to be fixed, you don't want to be that person to be like, oh,
Hmm.
well, sorry, customers, you're going to have to wait 6 months for engineering to get around to it. So I've really loved moving over to more of the all-in-one kind of tool.
Were there any downsides to the all-in-one?
Oh, yes and no. There are sometimes concerns with like security. How do we get the right people to see these docs when maybe parts of our product are behind like a sign-on? It became a little bit of a discussion every now and then, just kind of talking through the pros and cons of being able to have people see docs without needing to log in versus no, we really need to have things behind a sign on or a single sign on. That seems to be the thing that came up the most. So I would say just figuring out what should and should not be behind a login is the thing that came up the most for me.
How did that discussion go? I've dealt with a few companies lately that had their documentation, like some or all of it, mostly all of it, behind a sign-on because they were worried that other companies would copy their features and product. And as a result, they were basically invisible to agents and crawlers. And that that trade-off and the logic is interesting to me. So can you give some insight into how that discussion went?
Yeah, definitely. And basically, just what you said seemed to be their logic, which I understand. You don't necessarily want a competitor or another company to see what you're doing and take it and run with it. But at the same time, if you're having trouble with something like logging in the first place and you're just looking for some FAQs or, something to help you get to what you need, I feel like you shouldn't lock those things away. But at the same time, if you're very screenshot heavy and you're showing off features and functionality that you're worried about, then I definitely understand wanting to put that behind some kind of wall for sure.
So, speaking of AI, were AI tools part of your pipeline, especially most recent role?
In my most recent role, yeah, there was quite a push to incorporate AI in your day-to-day activities. We had a Claude 101 and 201 course that was recorded, and you could either go to the meeting or just watch the recording after. And it was people on the engineering team going through use cases and, just giving people ideas of how do we use this and how do we make the best of using it. And I remember reading through the guide that they gave us afterward, and they said something along the lines of their ultimate goal was for everybody to use this tool to be roughly twice as productive. So that kind of gave me a little bit of pause, especially because
Measured how?
I don't know how
Sorry,
you
please
would
continue.
measure, yeah, I don't know how you would measure that or enforce that. But when you're working with docs, that just doesn't always seem very feasible to me, unless you're using it how I used it. And it was just, I'm going to share something with you that I already wrote. Can you tell me how to improve clarity, flow? Is there anything that I'm missing here? Every now and then I would get a response that I did not see it that way. And yep, I'm going to think about this in that way and come back with something a little more polished. So, every now and then I would have some real actual improvements that I might not have otherwise thought of. But other times it's just, okay, yeah, like rearrange the words a little bit. Sure, fine. But to be twice as productive, I don't know if I would have ever been able to reach that kind of benchmark.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that old saw about twice as many lines of code doesn't mean that the program is twice as good.
Yeah. And then in the same vein, it's like that's twice as many places where you could have bugs. So at what cost are we incorporating tools like that? It's like, I get it. You want to be productive and make the best of the things that you're putting out to the world, but there always has to be the other side of the coin somewhere.
Whether you're job hunting, worried about where LLMs leave you, or you're the senior writer with nobody senior to talk to, I coach technical writers through all of it. Hiring manager perspective included, no extra charge. Calendar link is in the description. Let's talk. Now, back to the video. Did they talk about governance or ethics or security or anything in these trainings?
Really, the only thing that they had touched on security wise was just mentioning that, because, we were a healthcare adjacent company, certain people have access to private data, and
Mm-hmm.
just really driving home, like, do not include private data in your prompts. And they always had the little caveat that, like, our environment is set up to not teach models, so it's not going to be shared out. But at the same time, it just felt a little interesting that we're so heavily regulated in certain ways. So it just makes you wonder, how did something like that get through legal, or how does legal wrestle with making decisions like that? So I don't have the answer to that, but I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during conversations where we're talking about private data. How do we navigate this?
Yeah, without getting sued or fined or
Or yeah, somewhere down the line something happens and now all of your information is suddenly being shared to train a model
oh
and you didn't
geez.
know that an update happened or maybe it was accidental. So lots of possibilities that go through my head. I don't know how feasible any of those are to actually happen, but it's where my brain likes to go, I guess.
So were the workplace trainings helpful? And how did people seem to take them in?
They did seem to be pretty helpful, especially for people who this might have been the first time they were ever using an AI product. Definitely the 101 course was helpful, just explaining here's how you get the most out of writing a prompt. And, with Claude, you can set up your profile essentially to say, my name is Brittany. I am a technical writer at this company. These are my biggest responsibilities in the company. When I ask you to do something, I want things to be concise and technical, but not filled with jargon. So basically, you can just tell it how you want it to interact with you. So I felt like that was helpful for people who just live in different worlds inside the company, because the way that I would want to interact with AI would be different than somebody over in sales or in engineering. So it was nice that you were able to dictate, here's how I want our interactions to go.
So that sounds like the training was mostly about interacting with Claude in kind of the browser in its kind of conversation mode. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was definitely more of the focus of the 101 course. And then when we got to the 201 course, that was how do you use Claude Code and how do you use Claude Cowork? And I didn't get a chance to use either of those, but it seemed to still be helpful for the people who would have needed to use those two pieces of the puzzle.
Were you able to incorporate any automations into your documentation workflow?
Not really. I'm sure there would have been ways to incorporate it had I had a little more time to familiarize myself with how to incorporate it just in my day to day in general. The push to use Claude really only started in probably March. So I just had enough time to get familiar with how to tell Claude how I wanted it to interact with me. And then, just how fast we went with all of our releases and everything. I just didn't have the time to figure out how to make it work for me.
I wonder how many people are in that situation, like the demand from on high to use AI, get more productive, and the reality on the ground being, well, I've got too much work to do that I don't have the time to figure out how to be more productive.
Exactly. I feel like our situation was pretty across the board. People are just stretched thin. And, I have X amount of meetings to go to every day, or I have X amount of projects that I'm trying to juggle all at the same time. And just really trying to navigate, like, how am I supposed to incorporate a new tool that is supposed to help me be productive, but at the same time, there's a lot of maybe front loading, like I need to learn how to do things with it first.
Hey, free AI cheat sheet with who to follow and what to know. It's yours when you join my newsletter. Links in the description. Now back to the video. They're making documentation now that they fired their technical writer.
That is a good question. I am a little nervous that maybe my responsibilities are being absorbed by somebody else. There were other people on the product team. There were people on kind of our network partnerships team that had a little bit of overlap with what I did. So, yeah, I'm a little nervous that my responsibilities are now falling onto somebody else.
Hopefully, it's actually human because I've heard of some writers being let go and basically being replaced with Claude. And all I got to say is when I hear that, yeah, the odds be ever in your favor.
Exactly. Yeah, they're just some of the outputs that I've gotten using AI have been questionable, to say the least. If you're going to create end-to-end documentation using something that I find not always reliable, best of luck to you for sure.
So you've got a front row seat to the current economic, whatever we're calling this. What
Yes.
are you seeing in the job market?
It's not very fun, I'll put it that way. In general, just lots of postings. Not a lot of them are permanent positions.
Mhm.
A lot of them are temporary, contract, part-time, or some combination of those. And sometimes you run into things that you weren't necessarily expecting. I would not have guessed that so many technical writing roles, one, exist in kind of like the military side of things, but
Hmm.
also so many of those roles require security clearances. And I just wish there were easier ways to filter out certain aspects of roles like that. And I find a lot of times remote does not mean the same thing to everybody. So
Yeah.
I run into that a lot. I see a role and I'm reading and I'm reading and I'm getting excited and yeah, I feel like I want to apply to this. And then tucked away kind of at the end of the posting is we want people to be within 50 miles of our office, or we want people to come in to an office, once or twice a week. And it's like, okay, I feel like we're really missing the plot here because that seems more hybrid to me.
Yeah.
Remote in my mind is truly you can work from anywhere in the country. And whether you want to go into an office or not, like that's left up to you. So I just feel like maybe we need to do a better job of defining location-based criteria for
And by
roles in general.
by we, you mean the hirers, because they're the ones who are
Yeah,
playing fast and loose with definitions. I think we all
for
know what
sure.
remote means.
Yeah, I just feel like, yeah, employers in general should, maybe there even needs to be an additional thing, remote hybrid, maybe something else to maybe further call out the in-betweens. So
Like
I'm not sure what
remote
the
with
answer is there.
requirements, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, like remote asterisk, like who knows?
I like that remote asterisk. So I've been hearing from people that LinkedIn is basically dead when it comes to job searching. Have you found that to be true? Or is LinkedIn working for you? Or what platforms are you using for your job search?
It's really hit or miss with LinkedIn in my experience. I feel like LinkedIn does a good job of keeping things current. I've had
Hmm.
experiences with other job boards where you click on something and you're reading through it and you decide, I want to apply to that. So you click the apply button and then it takes you to the application page and it says, this role is no longer accepting applications or this role is no longer available. And it's like, okay, I feel like LinkedIn at least does a better job of either being upfront saying, this is no longer accepting applications or just being better about removing things as they need to be removed. But yeah, so I feel like I'm hitting all of the big ones like LinkedIn, Indeed. I've also tried to span out to things like there's one called Job Right, and
Hmm.
they provide like a percentage match for how equipped are you for this role specifically. So I've really liked that one. And I feel like I've been applying to things that I have more than a 50% match with. Hopefully, I'll find some success here. But yeah, those are the big ones.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Any advice? Any advice for other people in your position?
Be patient, don't give up, and I know it's kind of cliche, but really lean on the people you know. You never know who knows somebody that, it might be a good fit. So yeah, just really lean on the network you have and try to find ways to build on your network. That's kind of where I'm trying to prioritize, just trying to get a little more active on LinkedIn and getting more people to connect with me. So, yeah, like I said, you never know who's going to be the stepping stone to get you to your next role.
For sure. Thank you for joining me, Brittany. This has been a great conversation. And
Yeah,
hey,
thank you so
everyone,
much.
if you got value from this conversation, please like and subscribe, or however you do that, where you're watching this. And I'll see you next time on Technical Writing Uncensored. Bye for now.